Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Vav, Daf 36 of Masechet Ksubis, friends. Daf Lamed Vav, we just kind of keep on talking about Onis Mefate and the fine and when you're chayiv and stuff like that. And then we get up to a new Mishnah, which also kind of goes shtickle weiter on that topic. So that's what we're doing. Friends, we're going to start in Daf Lamed Vav with Beis. About 2, 4, 6 lines from the bottom at the 2 dots. Tanur, okay, good. Just want to make sure I didn't skip anything. Tanur Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Arayis, Vishnias Larayis, in loen lo knas v'lo pitui. Okie dokie, we're going to have to explain what that means, but it says in the Brisa that Arayis and Shnias Larayis, friends, who can tell me what Shnias Larayis are? Anybody learn Masechta Yevamis? Alright, we're going to have to see what it is though. Well, in Masechta Yevamis, Shnias Larayis was arayis that aren't actually also midah araisa, but or also midah rabbanon. So I think what was it, like your mother's mother or something like that? No, that's probably, I don't know. There's like people that are also midah rabbanon. Those are Shnias Larayis. Do we have examples here? I don't know. Shnias, the common first, right? We're going to explain it in our own way a little bit later. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Friends, we're moving on. So, Shnias Larayis, en loen lo knas v'lo pitui. So there is no fine, and there's no knas for ones or for mefata. Okay, fine. So a mima'enes, a ketana, who's mima'enes, right? Of course, we know all about Me'un from Masechta Yevamis, right? A ketana who is married by her mother or her brother, she could just leave at any time. Ein lo knas v'lo pitui. So also in a situation by a girl who was mima'enes, and then there was ones umefate, so there's no fine because the fine is only by a besula, and the assumption is that she's not a besula because she was married. Ailonis, if you have an ailonis, ein lo knas v'lo pitui. So also by onus mefata, by an ailonis, there's no knas, no pitui, because an ailonis is she's a girl who never reaches puberty ever, and she's basically considered a katana, right? Because a katana is until you have 2 pubic hairs. Now she never reaches that stage, so she just continues being a katana until at a certain point they realize okay, she's not a katana, she's an ailonis. And at that point, she just becomes an adult. She never has that situation where she reaches puberty and becomes a naira for half a year. And, okay, fine. So she just goes from being a katana to being an adult. And the assumption being that in neither of those stages of life would she receive a knas, right? Knas is only by naira. The Gemara is going to give some details there. Below pitoi, fine. Very good. Now, vayotes mishum shemra. Okay, if you have a woman who left her marriage because of a shemra, who could tell what motzi shemra is? So, generally what motzi shemra is, you have a naira who gets married, and the husband says that she's not a besula, and and that she had a relationship when she was a betrothed naira, a naira morasa, she's chayiv skila. So the Gemara is going to ask, isn't she chayev skila? So what does it mean that ein lo knas v'lo pitui? She's chayev skila. This seems to just not be a relevant question. So, okay, Seder. My arayis and shnias larayis. Fine. The Gemara wants to know, we said that by arayis and by shnias larayis, there's no fine. Ilem arayis mamish, shnias midivrei sofrim. So if we say arayis means the arayis, sisters, all that stuff. And we say that in that case there's no knas or anything like that, but shnias larayis or midivrei sofrim midir rabbanon, but that wouldn't make sense because kevin to midoraisa chazile amay no in knas. That if we're saying shnias larayis don't have the knas, why not? Shnias larayis are only midir rabbanon, which means midoraisa there would be a knas. So if midoraisa there would be a knas, there should be a knas. Ela arayis chayve misas bezdin shnias chayve kresus. So rather what we're saying is that by arayis, by arayis that you chayve misas bezdin or chorus, then there's no knas. Have a chayve lavin yesh lein knas. Chayve lavin there would be a knas. Umani Shimon HaTimni. That would be Shimon HaTimni that we learned his opinion about a week ago, that Shimon HaTimni, was it already a week ago? That Shimon HaTimni says that, yeah, of course, that Shimon HaTimni says that that it says V'lo Leisha, that they have to be able to be married, and therefore somebody that you chayiv misa for if you sleep with her, or chayiv karis for if you marry them, it wouldn't actually be a marriage, and therefore it's not shaykh to onus umufata, and there's no fine. But by a lav there is marriage. Right, you could be married, right? A mamzeres, right? So marriage counts. You can't stay together, but there's marriage. So therefore, there would be a knas. Ikadam to those who say arayis chayve misus bezdin v'chayve kreisus, that arayis are both chayve misus bezdin and chayve kreisus, and shnius are chayve lavin. Where shnius la arayis are talking about chayve lavin. Shnius la arayis are talking about chayve lavin, which means that both by right, even in a situation of chayv lavin where technically you could be married, technically if you married a mamzeres, you'd be married, and we're saying that there's no knas. So Mani Reb Shimon ben Menashe. So that's Reb Shimon ben Menashe who says that not only does it have to be somebody you're able to marry, but also somebody you're able to remain married with, right? And both by chayve misus bezdin and by chayve kresus and by chayve lavin. In any of those cases, even if you got married, you wouldn't be able to remain married. So therefore, there's no knas. Somebody's knocking outside. I assume it's not my door, and even if it is my door, I'm probably going to ignore them. But I'm a little curious what it is. Be right back. Oh wait, what? It's hard to tell. Friends, we got to go weiter. We got stuff to do. Enes ein lo knas v'lo pitui. So we had said in the brisa that by mimma enes, things get interesting over here. That by mimma enes ein lo knas v'lo pitui. So by mimma enes, when the assumption right now is that we're talking about a ketana, that a ketana who walked out of her marriage, so there's no knas, right? There's no knas by onus umafate, because the assumption is that she's not a basula. Now, haketana ba'alma isla, implying that, well, if we're not talking about a mimma enes, if it was any other ketana, there would be a knas. Now, money rabbanani. That seems to be the opinion of the rabbis, right? Because according to a Meir, who is the author of our Mishnah, at least the first Mishnah in the parak, that we're talking about dafka and naira to the exclusion of a ketana. That's the opinion of a Meir, that that there's only a knas by onus mafata by a naira, not by a ketana. The chacham say it even applies to a ketana. Now over here we're saying that dafka a mimma enes, who's not a basula, or the assumption is that she's not a basula. So then there's no knas, implying that other ketanas, there would be a knas by onus mafata. So that's the opinion of the rabbanan, the amri ketana yesh lo knas, that they say that there's a knas even by a ketana, ema seifa. But one second. But what else do we say in that brisa? Ailonis ein lo knas v'lo pitui. That in Ailonis, there's no knas v'lo pitui, right? The onus mafata, the fine doesn't apply. Also on the Reb Meir, the amri ketana ein lo knas. That's the opinion of Reb Meir, who says that there's no knas by a ketana, v'hami katnusa yotza sadavager. Right, and a Ailonis goes straight from being a ketana to a bogeres, right? So meaning we said by Ailonis that there's no knas of onus umafata. Now in Ailonis, right, mikatnusa yotza sadavager, that she goes straight from being a ketana to being a bogeres. So we're saying that by onus umafata there's no knas because she's never an ira. She's only either a ketana or a bogeres, and it's like the opinion of Reb Meir, who says that a ketana doesn't have a knas. So on the one hand, the Reisha seems to be saying that a ketana in general does have a knas, so it's the chachamim. Yet the Seifa seems to be saying that ketana does not have a knas, which is Reb Meir's opinion. Reisha Rabbanan v'Seifa Reb Meir? I don't understand. Are we saying that in one brisa, the first part is the rabbis and the second part is Reb Meir? V'chitema kula Reb Meir. And if we say no, it's actually entirely Reb Meir. Well, if it's entirely Reb Meir, then how do you understand the Reisha where it seems to be saying that a ketana has a knas? But the point is, it's actually not true that a mimma enes is talking about a ketana. It's talking about a naira. That if you have a ketana whose mother or brother marries her off, and then she becomes a naira, as long as she hasn't slept with her husband from the time that she becomes a naira, she could still do me'un. And therefore, Reb Meir is holding like Reb Yehuda that a naira is able to do me'un, and we're saying that a naira who's mima enes, so doesn't have a knas because she's not with the assumption she's not a besula, but any other naira there would be a knas. So we could say it's entirely Reb Meir. It's entirely Reb Meir that by a naira there is a knas, by a ketana there's no knas. And when it says mima enes, we're talking about a naira. And when we say by a nailonis, there's no knas because she's always either a ketana or a boger. She's never a naira. Umisavrla. Umisavrla. Does Reb Meir really hold like Rabbi Yehuda, however, that a naira can be mima enes? V'atanya ad mosei abbas mima enes. We have a brayse that says, until when can a daughter be mima enes? Achetavi shtei cyrus div Reb Meir. Reb Meir says only until shtei cyrus, until she has two pubic hairs, until she becomes a naira. Rabbi Yehuda Omer achi ay b'shachar alav. Rabbi Yehuda says no, even once she has two pubic hairs, even when she becomes a naira, she could still do me'un. I think as long as she hasn't slept with her husband, because I think at that point she would be married midaraisa. So as long as right, so she can do me'un until a little bit further, until there's more black hairs, I guess, than white hairs. No. So we see that Reb Meir says that she can only do me'un until she's a naira. So Memele, if she's doing mima enes, if she's be doing me'un, she's a ketana. So Rabbi Yehudi. So rather, let's say that the entire brayse is Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, the reisha, when we're talking about mima enes, we're talking about a naira. The seifa, by Nailonis, he holds like Reb Meir. So let's go by there for a second. Uviktana savar Reb Meir, and that Reb Yehuda holds like Reb Meir with regard to ones umefata, that it only applies to a naira, but there would be no knas by a ketana, and therefore, so we're saying that when it comes to me'un, so we're saying that the entire brayse is really Reb Yehuda's opinion. And therefore, when it comes to me'un, we're talking about a naira. And also Rabbi Yehuda holds like Reb Meir that the knas of onus umufata only applies to naira, not a ketana. So therefore, when it comes to me'un, we're talking about a naira. And we're saying that if she was mima enes, so then there's no knas because she's not a besula. But if it's just a regular naira, so then there would be a knas. And also when it comes to in Ailonis, there's no knas because she's always either a ketana or a bogeres. She's never a naira. And Reb Yehuda holds like Reb Meir with regards to the fine of a ones umufata that is dafka by a naira. Umisavrla. But is it true that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Reb Meir? Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Rav Zodiv Reb Meir, that this is dafka the opinion of Reb Meir. Vim Isa, and if Rabbi Yehuda held like Reb Meir, Zodiv Reb Meir, Rabbi Yehuda mi baile. It should say not just that it's the opinion of Reb Meir, but that it's also the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda as well. So Aitana Savrla Reb Meir bechada ufalig ole bechada. So the Gemara answers that this brisa holds like Reb Meir, right? The Tana of this brisa, I guess whoever it is, holds like Reb Meir in one regard, but not like Reb Meir in the other. Meaning he holds like Reb Meir that by ones umefate, the knas is only for a naira besula, not for a ketana. So the Tana of this brisa holds like Reb Meir that the knas is only by a naira. But he doesn't hold like Reb Meir, rather he holds like Rabbi Yehuda with regard to me'un, that it could also be by a naira. Reb Meir would say you can only do me'un until she becomes a naira. Rabbi Yehuda says you can even do me'un by a naira. And therefore the reisha, right, the reisha when it says that a mima enes, there's no knas, but other people in her age category, there would be a knas, it's talking about a naira, like Rabbi Yehuda says. And when it comes to the knas of onus umufata, it's dafka by a naira. So in the reisha, this mima enes who's a naira, there's a knas by onus umufata, well, not by the mima enes because she's not a besula, but by other nairas. And when it comes to the sefer, which is by an ailonis, there's no knas because she's always either a katana or a bogeres, and he holds like Reb Meir that the fine of an onus umufata is only by a naira. Fine. Very good. Very, very good. Rafram Omar says, Rafram, my mima enes, haru'uya lema'in. Rafram says that what does mima enes mean? Doesn't mean that she actually does me'un. It's somebody who's able to do me'un. Who's able to do me'un? Ektanim. So you could say that the entire brisa is Reb Meir, and say that when it says mima enes, it means haru'uya lima'in, i.e., a ketana doesn't have a knas of onus umufate, and an ilonis also doesn't have a knas of onus umufate, because both of them are ketanas. Okay. But let's make ketana, so why not just say ketana? Why say mima enes if it means haru'uya lima'in? Just say ketana. Kasha. We say it's not a good kasha. Yeah, it should have just said ketana. It would have made things easier. Alright, fine. Very good. Ilonis ein lo knas v'lo pitui. Okay, so we had said that an ilonis does not have a knas or a pitui by onus or by mefate. And we said it's because she's always either a ketana or a bogeres, never a naira. V'ramini, but 1 second, we have a kasha. Chereshes ve'ashota ve'ilonis. That when it comes to a chereshes, somebody who's mute and deaf, v'ashota, or somebody who doesn't have mental faculties, I guess, v'ilonis, and an ilonis, yesh lein knas, they do have a knas, v'yesh lein tainas besulim, and you can assume that she is a besula, and if not, right, meaning when a fellow gets married, you can assume that she's a besula, and if she's not a besula, then you could say, hey, I thought I was marrying a besula. So, viha my rumya. So 1 second. So we asked the kasha. Meaning on the one hand, our initial brisa said that Nilonis doesn't have a knas, and yet over here we're saying that Nilonis does have a knas. For my rumya, her mehar rabbanon. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. What's the question? Easy answer. The initial brisa was the opinion of Reb Meir. That's why Nilonis doesn't have a knas, because she's a ketana, and the other brisa is the opinion of the rabbis, and that's why there is a knas, because you can even have a knas by a ketana. With the karila, my karila, I mean, so that's a good answer. So who raised the question? What were they thinking when they raised the question? Obviously, one of them is Reb Meir, one of them is the Rabbanon. So mishum de islay lemirma achrise ilave. Well, because there's another kasha we can ask, which is we have another brisa that says achereshes ve'ashota ve'avogeres umukas eitz, that a chereshes, right, deaf and mute, v'ashota, or shota v'abogeres, or an adult umukas eitz, somebody who doesn't have bisulim, ein loen tainas bisulim. They don't have tainas bisulim. So on the one hand, we just had a brisa that says that a chereshes and a shota do have tainas bisulim. Now we have a brisa that says a chereshes and a shota don't have a tainas bisulim. Okay, fine. Okay. Right, meaning so if they have tainas besulim, right, he can, the husband can come the next day and say, hey, I thought that it was a besula, and she loses her ksuba. But if there's no tainas besulim, then he can't make her lose her ksuba. Okay, fine. Hasuma ve'ilonis yesh len tainas besulim. Okay, so by hasuma and ilonis, he can say, hey, I thought I was making a besula. Sumchus omer mishum Reb Meir says, sumchus and Reb Meir suma ein lo tainas besulim, that by a blind girl there is no tainas besulim. Amr of Sheshes is of Sheshes lo kasha. Says of Sheshes is no question, right? Meaning on the one hand we said that a chereshes and a shota had that there is a tainas besulim, that he could say, hey, I thought she was a besula. And another bride says that a chereshes and a shota, he cannot say, hey, I thought she was a besula. So we say no problem. Says of Sheshes lo kasha. Haram Gamliel Harab Yoshua. One's Rabbi Gamliel and one's Rabbi Yeshua, right? If you remember back from the first parak, what are we in the third parak already? If you remember back from the first parak, we had a machlokas between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua of do we trust her or do we trust him? Right? Rabbi Gamliel says that we could trust her. If she says, look, Misherastani and Asti, that she was raped after Erisin, so then we could trust her. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, we can't trust her. We can't just assume that to go based on what she's saying. So we'll say the same thing over here, that since if she wasn't a chereshes or a shota, she would be able to make the claim misherastani nenasti. So therefore, we can make the claim for her and say misherastani nenasti. That when he comes and says, "Look, she's not a besula," we could make the claim for her. Yeah, but misherastani nenasti, that she was raped after she was betrothed, and therefore, he can't make that claim. And Rabbi Yeshua would say that we don't make the claim for her. But then says the Gemara, But 1 second, I'll say that, look, when Rabbi Gamliel says that we can trust her, that's when she makes the claim for herself. Misherastani nenasti. But if she herself doesn't make the claim, right? She's a chereshes or a shota, and she's not making that claim. We can't just assume that, well, if she was a pikachas, then she could have made the claim. So we say, actually we could, because Kevin to Amar Rabbi Gamliel mehemna, since Rabbi Gamliel says that if she makes the claim, then she's believed kigonzo. Well, then in a situation when she's a chereshes or a shota and she can't make the claim for herself, psach picha leilem hu. We could apply the pasuk from Mishle. It says psach picha leilem. Open up your mouth for somebody who's mute, right? So in this case, since she is unable to make the claim for herself, we could make the claim for her, and say that, right, make the claim of Misher Estani and Asti, and if he comes to say that, hey, I thought I was marrying a Basula, well, we could say that, at the time that they got engaged, she was a Basula. And therefore, Rabbi Gamliel would say that he cannot make the claim of Tanis Basulim, whereas Rabbi Yeshua says that he could claim Tanis Basulim. So we had just said about Bogeris ein lo Tanis Basulim, that also by a Bogeris, then he can't make a Tanis Basulim that he thought he was marrying a Basula. But one second, for Amar Rav, but doesn't Rav say Bogeris nosen Laila Arishon? Doesn't Rav say that if a fellow marries a Bogeris, so any dam that there might be on the first night, so you can assume that it's dam Basulim, right? We don't assume that it's dam nida. Now, doesn't that imply that a Bogeris also has dam, in which case he should be able to make a claim of Tanis Basulim, like there was no dam? So the Gemara says, look, either Katarin Tanis dam machinami. Yeah, in achinami. If he's coming and saying that there's no dam and he's proving that there's no dam, okay, we could listen to it. But Hachab ma'iskin the Katarin Tanis Pesach Pasuch. Here we're talking about a time of Pesach Pasuch when he comes with no evidence and he says, look, it's a Pesach Pasuch, that he could tell. He's an expert. He could tell that he is not the first person to sleep with her. And we say, look, if it's a Bogeris, he can't make that claim because since she's older, I guess it's not as tight, and therefore, if he says, look, I know that I wasn't the first one here, we say, look, she's a Bogeris. It's not the same. Let's go weiter. Sumchus Omer. Mishum Meir, Suma ein lo Tanis Basulim. Sumchus says in the name of Meir that a Suma, a fellow marries a Suma, he can't wake up the next day and say, hey, I thought I was marrying a Basula. My time with the Sumchus, how come Sumchus says that? Omer Abzera says Abzera, Mipnei shenech betes al gabe karka. Well, because she may have fallen onto the floor and lost her Basulim that way. Kulunami chabute mechabte. Well, anybody who maybe falls in a certain way might lose their Basulim. So Kulu ro sumarus liimon. Yeah, but other people could see and they would tell their mothers, and then they would now it's sort of recognized, and then at that, and their mothers would tell them, okay, you lost your Basulim, and now when you get married, and you'll make sure to tell your husband so he doesn't expect to be marrying a Basula and whatever. But if she's blind, then she won't know, and she won't tell her mother, and then nobody will know. And therefore, that is why, this guy can't wake up the next day and say, hey, she's not a Basula. It's all right. I mean, that it happens with somebody who wouldn't know if she lost her Basulim. Mishum shem ra ein lo knas v'lo pitui. Somebody who is yotzeis mishum shem ra. So as I explained earlier, sort of generally, what a case of motzi shem ra is that a man and a woman get married. Really, a naira gets married, and the husband says the next day, look, she's not a Basula. She had a relationship after Erusin. She's a naira, but also she's chayev eskila. So therefore, the Gemara says, right, and we say that there's no knas over there. That by onus mefate, by this girl, there's no knas. Vayotzes misum shemra baskilahi. We say, one second. That by motzi shemra, she's chayev eskila. What are we talking about here? That now there's onus mefate, she's chayev eskila if it's motzi shemra. So Rav Sheishes, Hachi Ka'amar says, Rav Sheishes is what it means. Mishayotza alea shemra b'yaldusa. We're going to have to explain exactly what this means as the Gemara develops, but it says Rav Sheishes, somebody that's some kind of a bad name, Yentis, Shabbos afternoon in the bungalow colony. So Mishayotza alea shemra b'yaldusa, there was rumors that spread about her in when she was younger. Ein la lo knas v'lo pitoi. So then that's what it means. Motzi shemra, that if she had a bad reputation, that she was having relationships with other people when she was having relationships that she shouldn't be having with other people when she was younger. So then ein la lo knas v'lo pitoi, then there's no, then we can't assume that she's a basula, and if she's not a basula, then there's no knas. Amar Papa says, Papa Shmamina, and says, Papa, we see from here, Aishtara Reya, that if there is a document that there are sort of rumors circulating about the validity of the document, Lo Magbinon Bey, we can't collect with it. So now we have to understand, okay, what's going on? What's the deal with the document? What's the deal with this Motzi Shemra? Hey Chidami, what are we talking about? If we're saying that, well, rumors, right? Shabbos afternoon in the bungalow colony, and the Yentis are out, they're sitting on their beach chairs, and somebody says, okay, who should we talk about? And then they say, oh, I heard there was a document, and apparently it's not good. The Zaifa, it's forged. Yankel, the forger, forged the document. And then they start saying, oh, really? And they start saying, all sorts of everything they know on the topic. So, the Zaifa, the Chavasa Hacha, and the same thing now, with regard to this case of Motzi Shemra, to Nafak Ola Kala Dizanoi, that, similarly, Shabbos afternoon in the bungalow colony, the Yentis are out on the beach chairs, and they are drinking Diet Coke, and because they're always on a diet. Anyways, so then they start talking about this girl, that she's been having relationships that they don't approve of. Rava says, Yatzala Shem Mizane Ba'ir Ein Choshin La. But Rava says that Yatzala Shem Mizane Ba'ir Ein Choshin La. That Rava says we don't listen to the Yentis. I mean, why should we? Bungalow colony, Shabbos afternoon, Yentis, it's not exactly, peer-reviewed facts over here. So, Ella de also betray. Oh, okay, so now things are getting more serious. Forget about the Yentis. Two witnesses came, Ba'amri, and they said, Ledidu Tavad Tani Be'isura, that she tried to get us to actually sleep with her. The Chavasa Hacha, that the same thing by the document, Dasu betray, that two witnesses came, Ba'amri, and they said, Ledidu Omar Lehu Zaifuli. That two witnesses came and said, look, this guy who made this document, he was kind of looking for people to sign the document for him, and he's not to be trusted. So what we're saying is, by this case of Motzi Shemra, where there's no knas by onus mifate, it's talking about where there are witnesses who say that, like, look, this girl approached us to sleep with her, and therefore we can assume that she's she was sort of going around looking for people to sleep with, so then we can assume that she's not a b'sula, in which case there's no knas. And then we could say the same thing also here about this document that we say that we cannot rely on. It's talking about where the fellow who wrote the document was kind of going around looking for people to sign on this document for him, but it wasn't really a valid document. So Bishlama Hasam, so therefore we can't rely on the document. So Bishlama Hasam Shriche Prutzen. Well, I understand when it comes to this girl, you can assume that if she was looking around for men to sleep with, she could probably find one. There are prutzen, there are men who would be willing to do that. But when it comes to the document, if this guy's a nudnik, that doesn't necessarily mean that all the other yidden are nudniks and they're going to sign on this document falsely. So no, well, not necessarily other people are going to be, signing falsely on the document, but maybe since this guy's a nudnik and he's looking around for people to sign falsely on the document, maybe he said to heck with it and he's just going to sign himself, forged signatures in the document, and therefore we can't rely upon the document. Well, now we get to a new Mishnah. Ve'elu she'ein loen knas. So now the following women do not have a knas when it comes to onus umefata. Fellow sleeps with a convert or somebody who was taken captive, or a slave woman, who were redeemed or converted or were freed from slavery. Right, that they were older than 3 in a day, right? Meaning that they were redeemed from captivity, or that they converted, or that they were freed when they were older than 3 in a day, which means that when they were 3 in a day, they were still either in captivity, or a slave woman, or not Jewish. Rabbi Yehuda, so in that case, there's no knas, because since once they were 3 in a day and older, which is sort of the minimum for being ro'ui libiyah, and that the besulim won't come back at that point. So therefore, there's a possibility that she is not a besula, so then therefore there's no knas. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda shvuya shenifte sarei b'kedushaso, afal pisha gedola. And Rabbi Yehuda says, look, when it comes to a woman who's taking, a girl who's taken captive, we can assume that she remains tahora, and even if she's a gedola. So therefore, there would still be knas by onas mefate. Haba, this is shtikl yivamasi, but nothing crazy. Haba al bito fell asleep with his daughter, al bas bito with his granddaughter, al bas beno, also his granddaughter, al bas ishto, the daughter of his wife, al bas beno, on her daughter, right, the daughter's daughter, Abbas Bita, wait, what? Abbas Bina, the daughter of her son, Abbas Bita, the daughter of her daughter, Ein Lain Knas. In none of these cases there's a Knas. Because it's Chayiv Misa. I think it's Sreifa. Shemisasim be de Bezdin, that Misa is Bezdin, V'chol Mischayv Benafsho, and somebody who's Chayiv Misa, Ein Mishalim Mammon, does not pay money. Shenamar V'im Lo Yeh, also an Onish Yonish. That it says Davka, if there's, right, if there's nobody dies, so then there's money, right? So going back to the case where Ruvain wanted to kill Shimon, instead he killed Sarah. So if Sarah does not die, so then Ruvain has to pay financial. But if Sarah does die, then he doesn't pay, and therefore the Ruvain is Chayiv Misa, so then there's no Mammon. Okay, so if a fellow sleeps with his daughter, or any of these arrives that he's Chayiv Misa is Bezdin for, so then there would be no fine. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so it's Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Dosa, Amud Aver Echad. That Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a shvuya, even if she's a gedola, she's bekedushasa, and therefore there is a fine for ones umefate, holds like Rabbi Dosa, right? Rabbi Dosa, Amud Aver Echad, he's in agreement with Rabbi Dosa. Rabbi Yehuda had Amaran, Rabbi Yehuda, that which we said, that we can assume that she's bekedushasa. Rabbi Dosa the Tanya, Rabbi Dosa, we learn in a brayso, shvuya ocheles betruma, divrei Rabbi Dosa. That Rabbi Dosa says that a shvuya can eat truma, right? If she's right, we don't assume that she's a halala, that she slept with somebody who she wasn't able to, that she's a halala, and therefore she can't eat truma. No, she can continue to eat truma. And Amar Rabbi Dosa says, Rabbi Dosa v'chima also la haravi alaz. Rabbi Dosa says, because after all, what happened when she was in captivity? V'chim pnei mi'echla ben dodea paslu min hakahuna. He said, Rabbi Dosa says, look, when she was in captivity, they didn't sleep with her. They may have, touched her inappropriately, but not, he didn't sleep with her, and therefore, that doesn't make her puzzle to kahuna. Fine. So we see that, both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Dosa seem to be saying that Rabbi Dosa and Rabbi Yehuda seem to be saying that a girl who was taken into captivity, she's b'kedushasa, she can eat truma. If there's onus mufatas, then there would be a fine. Omar Rabba says, Rabba Dumaloi, maybe it's not true. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Dosa don't agree. Adkan lo ka'am Rabbi Yehuda acha. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda only says in the case of onus umefate that a shvuya the right would still receive a fine. Because if we would say that a shvuya there's no fine, then the rapist sort of wins, right? He's rewarded by the fact, she's a shvuya, and now this, after she went through being a shvuya, there was onus, and now we're saying that there's no knas, the guy doesn't get fined because she's a shvuya, he benefits. And we don't want him benefiting. So therefore Rabbi Yehuda says that, even if she's a shvuya, we assume that b'ktushasa kaima, and he still has to pay a fine. So that the sinner shouldn't profit or benefit from the fact that that she was a shvuya. Aval hasam, but maybe when it comes to eating truma, kirabanan svirle, Rabbi Yehuda will hold like the rabbi that a shvuya cannot eat truma. Inami, alternatively, Adkan lokam Rabbi Dosa awesome. Maybe Rabbi Dosa only says over there, Ela b'truma derabanan. Maybe by truma derabanan, a shvuya can eat. She can eat truma derabanan. Have a knas de oraisa, but a knas which is mida oraisa, right? By onus umefate, kirabanan svirle. Maybe we would hold like the rabbis that a shvuya is not b'kedushasa, and therefore there is no knas. So Abaye says to Rabba, V'taimid Rabbi Yehuda hacha shelo yechote niskar. Is the reason for Rabbi Yehuda here really so that, meaning, is it really true that Rabbi Yehuda holds, can we really make the argument that Rabbi Yehuda holds that really a shvuya is not b'kedushasa? But the only reason why Rabbi Yehuda says over here that she is b'kedushasa is so that the sinner, the rapist, doesn't benefit and save, be spared from the fine. But we learn in the Brayso, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, shvuya shenishbeis, that a shvuya, harei b'kedushasa, she remains b'kedushasa, afilu bas eser shanim, even if she's 10 years old, nonetheless, ksubasa masayim, her ksuba is still masayim 200 zuz, we assume that she's a besula. V'hasam, my shelo yechote niskar, ika. And where is there shelo yechote niskar? There's no sinner over there that we want to say that she's b'kedushasa to prevent some sinner from benefiting. What's the sinner over here? By her ksuba. So no, but even though still you can make the same a similar argument over there, which is that really Rabbi Yehuda holds that a shvuya is not b'kedushasa kaima. But in the case of the ksuba, we still make her ksuba 200 zuz so that people want to marry her. Maybe if she was a shvuya and now her ksuba was 100 zuz, people might not want to marry her for whatever reason, and therefore we want to avoid that. So therefore Rabbi Yehuda says b'kedushasa kaima. But really in other situations, maybe like by trumeh, he would hold like the rabbis that she's not b'kedushasa. Okay. V'savar Rabbi Yehuda b'kedushasa kaima. Now we say, one second, is it really true that Rabbi Yehuda holds that she remains b'kedushasa? V'atanya, but we learn in the Brayso, apodes hashvuya, that a fellow who pays money to redeem a captive girl, yisa'ena, he could redeem her and then marry her. Made balo yisa'ena. But if he testifies about her that she's tahora, that she didn't have relations with her captors, so then he cannot marry her. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda says that regardless of if he redeemed her or if he testified about her, he cannot marry her. So sounds like he's saying that she's not b'kedushasa, right? He's not allowed to marry her, right? If he's a kohen, he can't marry her. Now we say, one second, I don't understand. On one end you said that a fellow who redeems this girl from captivity, even if he's a kohen, he can marry her. And then we said that if he testifies about her that she is, right, that she didn't have a relationship, right, that she didn't sleep with any of her captors, he cannot marry her. I don't understand, because he testified about her that she didn't sleep with her captors, he cannot marry her? I don't understand. Halokasha, it's no problem. This is what it means. No, if he redeems her and he also testifies about her, so then he can marry her. But if he only testifies about her but he didn't spend money to redeem her, so then he cannot marry her. Fine, but what about the question of Rabbi Yehuda? On the one hand, in our mission, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that this girl who is taken captive remains b'kedushasa. On the other hand, we're saying that if he's a kohen, he can't marry her. So, Omer Papa says, Papa Emer Rabbi Yehuda Omer ben kach uben kach yiso'ena. So Papa says, no, say that Rabbi Yehuda says that regardless of if he redeemed her or if he testified about her, he can marry her because she's b'kedushasa. She remains b'kedushasa. We assume that she did not sleep with her captors. Rav Huna Breid Rav Yeshua Omer la'olam kediktani Rabbi Yehuda. Kediktani. Really, it's like we said that Rabbi Yehuda says that either way he cannot marry her. And Rabbi Yehuda ledivreim derabanan kamalu. Rabbi Yehuda is just responding to the rabbi's opinion. He says, look, ledidi ben kach uben kach yiso'ena. Look, according to me, either way, this fellow could marry her, because she's b'kedushasa kaima. Elo l'didchu, but according to you, ben kach uven kach lo yis'ena, according to you that you're making a distinction between, if he redeemed her or if he testified about her, either way, according to you, shouldn't you assume that she slept with her captors, in which case, if he's a kohen, he can't marry her. So, lo yis'ena mi ba'ilei. So for Rabbanon, hapodes hashvuya umeid ba yis'ena. Whereas the rabbi's logic was the following. He says, look, if a fellow spends money to be poda the shivuya, and he testifies that she didn't have she didn't sleep with her captors, so he could marry her because lo shdi inish zuze bichdi, he wouldn't spend money to redeem her. If he didn't know for sure that he could marry her, and therefore if he spends money to redeem her and says, look, she's tahora, and he wants to marry her, so then we can assume that really she's tahora and he can marry her. But kdi, if he just testifies that he knows that she didn't sleep with her captors, but he didn't actually spend money to be poda, so then lo yusani, he cannot marry her shema ein of nosamba, because maybe he's just attracted to her and wants to marry her, but it might not be true. Friends, that was the Lamed Vav of Masechet Ksubis. I gotta run. Peace out.